those that don't know, the paint that we use extracts CO2 out of the atmosphere. It's the equivalent of having 6 mature trees on the side of a building. Just before Christmas, we became a certified B Corp. And we're the first commercial agency on the South Coast. We're one of 3 in the UK. But what is a B Corp? So Jamie obviously will explain in a bit, but it's the la creme de la creme of eco credentials. So right now, I'm on cloud 9. We've hit some incredible milestones, but alongside everything I've just mentioned, just to fill you in on the gaps, I opted for redundancy in September 2019. 1st of December 2020, I launched the business. 20 days later, I found out I had skin cancer. The following December, I lost a friend to mental health. May 22, I welcomed baby number 2, and I was back at work after 8 weeks. So hearing the words, "you have skin cancer," I thought to myself, are you freaking kidding me? I just left the corporate safety net. I have no private medical insurance. I have a young son. So I did what I knew was best. I focused on committing my goals to Amiga RE. I felt this sheer urgency to leave a positive legacy. So everything I'm doing, I'm on a mission to make a difference in my industry and how I do business and how do I live my life in the present. Everything I do is about leaving a positive legacy and supporting the next generation. So ask yourself, what is your purpose? All right, so I'm just going to show you a video. Right, I'm now going to invite Julie to the stage. She's the CEO of EDT, which stands for Engineering and Development Trust. And she is one of our charity partners for the year. So I'd like you to invite you up to the stage to say a few words.
So good morning, everyone. And I'll just say a couple of words about, and I suppose it's a bit of a reflection on what Nella was saying as well, about legacy, purpose. I used to work in the tech industry many years ago and changed my sector to the not-for-profit sector to help with young people and inspiring and exciting young people towards the industry of which I represented in the tech industry, but more broadly in terms of STEM. So what we do at EDT is we work with companies and get them engaged in activities, doing outreach for young people all the way from age 9 all the way to age 20 to their first apprenticeship to university. With companies like yourself, we all know, and we hear this in terms of the investment in the South, the economy needs to grow, you need the skills, don't you, to enable that growth. So part of the challenge that we have, and part of the reason why I do what I do, and we partner with Amiga RE to talk to Amiga, to thank them to support us as a charity partner, is to basically say, what can we do collaboratively and together? We're here to talk about green today, and we know how much green careers and green skills and jobs are going to grow. But unless we get better at articulating that to young people, then the danger is they're not going to think companies care enough about green skills, and that's part of the reason why I'm here today. So I'd love to work with any of you, have discussions afterwards to talk about how we can engage together to work with young people, to get them excited about the industry, wanting to work and remain in the South Coast, and see what we can do collectively and together, because I do fundamentally believe you all do good things, you all come here with a passion and interest in terms of green. If we can find a way of working together, it makes it stronger. Thank you.
Thank you very much. You can take a seat here, actually. Yeah, anyway, take a seat. So thank you very much, Julie. We believe that everyone actually has a right to the same access, and this is something that Amiga RE are extremely passionate about. You would have noticed that this event is a free event, and it's sponsored by some of the partners here today, but there was an option to donate on our Just Giving page, and anyone in this room that refers us work, we will donate 2% of our revenue generated to EDT. So right, let's get started to the panel, why you're all here. So I know that you've all been patiently sitting there. I know it's really comfy, but you're going to have to get up on stage. So we have Jamie Harris, who is the B leader. He's come on the stage. The co-chair of B Local Hampshire and supporting businesses with a local B Corp journey. Freddie Pritchard, co-chair of Trustek, bridging the gap between property and technology. Alex Hurn, managing director of building surveying of Sillence, who plays a pivotal role in advising sustainability in the built environment. And last but not least, Dale Kershaw from HSBC, who's the business relationship manager for Hampshire, Dorset, and the Isle of Wight. I don't know about some of you in the room, but in my mind, I'm like, show me the money. So, firstly, what does sustainability actually mean? So, I've just finished the Cambridge University course in sustainability, and it's opened my eyes in a whole different level. So, being sustainable, what it simply means is that it's meeting the needs of the present without compromising the ability of the future generations, and that you're meeting the needs of your own. For me, sustainability is about the holistic approach that incorporates environment, social, economics, and factors to ensure that we're balancing the long-term development benefiting both the present and the future generations. So many people, when they think about sustainability, they think about reducing carbon footprint, but it touches every aspect of our daily lives. So embracing sustainability isn't merely an ethical choice, but it can be a strategic move for businesses looking to thrive in the future by aligning with values of their key stakeholders and contributing to the environment along with the society. So my first question, Jamie, so you just need to pass the mics down. So Jamie, what is B Corp? Is it just another fad? There's so much greenwashing out there, isn't there? So could you just elaborate for our audience, like what is the process, the criteria to become a B Corp, and are there any notable restrictions?
Yeah, absolutely. So that's a great question. Is it another fad? We do get that a lot, absolutely. And one thing that is important to share about B Corp is that essentially it's a certification. It's a commitment that businesses undertake to show that they are legally committing their business to their stakeholders, not just their shareholders. It's about purpose, it's about impact, and there is a community across the globe in 92 countries of B Corps that have gone through this certification. In the UK, there are nearly 1,900 B Corps currently, which is a really big growth opportunity for us. And when we look at the word fad, it's kind of important to say it's a community here, it's a movement. And the piece with B Corp is it is a certification, and you get the certification by completing something called a B Impact Assessment. So simply put, it's a big questionnaire that adapts to the type of business that you are, the sector that you operate in, the size of your company as well. And once you've completed this assessment, you then submit it to your B Lab. So B Lab are the charity that curate this certification. And after you've submitted your assessment, you go through what's called an evaluation and verification process. Simply put, it's making sure that you really have said, you really are doing what you said on your assessment. So there's evidence to be produced, and there's also a legal commitment to make. And that's kind of the bit I touched on originally, which is B Corps legally commit to being a force for good in the business world. I guess one thing to really bring to life here is that the B Corp movement, you see big corporates becoming B Corps and lots of questions around, well, what about smaller companies? In the UK, the dominant share of B Corps are under 10 employees in size, so 0 to 10 employees. That's a significant shape. If you look at the SME scape in the UK and the landscape that offers as a way of creating really positive impact through business. And we've touched a bit on here, Nella, around environmental impact, but it's really important to share that a bit like yourself and all the incredible charity work that you're doing through Omega RE, it's not just environment, it's governance. So the assessment is broken into 5 key areas. Governance, how do you do business? What's your purpose? What's your mission? How are you bringing that to life? A workers section, so how are you looking after your staff? How are they financially secure? How do you support them and their families and their friendships networks? Community, so what are you doing to engage with the local community? Environment, absolutely. So what are you doing to shape environmental impact? And customers, how are you supporting your customers and using and working with them to use your resources as a force for good. And that's really what the B Corp movement looks like.
So as a business owner, how can businesses balance that commitment to sustainability and maintaining profits, but also that there is actually tangible benefits on your bottom line in the long run?
Yeah, no, I mean, it's just to reiterate what you said, it is a journey, and as Jamie suggested, it's a lot more than putting the paper in the right recycling bin or making sure you're paper free, etc. It's been really interesting, really insightful for us. A really good journey. I mean, 12 months is good going. I think we're 16 months in now, and still and just about getting there with our submission. As a business, just touching on what we've changed ourselves. I mean, we're a building surveying business, so we're advising commercial property owners, residential property owners, homeowners on their properties. 80% of our emissions as a business are based on travel, and our surveyors going out to site, and how the big shift for us was how we could do that as sustainably as possible. So we have introduced an EV salary sacrifice car scheme, which is having a really good impact and having really good buy-in across the team. And what is eye-opening as well is because we only run an office on a leasehold basis, so we have a landlord in a traditional sense under a traditional lease. You are really heavily reliant on your landlord and the incentives and their buy-in to making your space as sustainable as possible, because there's a lot of criteria around that. So we've been working closely with them about influencing them on using eco-friendly cleaning products, making sure recycling and everything like that is done properly as well as possible. And as Jamie said, it goes well beyond the green element. I mean, a lot of it is people focused, and it's really eye-opening that you have to really go down your supply chain and make sure all your suppliers are aligned with what you're trying to achieve, and that they're almost acting sustainably as well. So we've had some interesting conversations there, and we have also implemented a much enhanced paternity and maternity cover as well. So that's given us some good people policies in place.
Julie, I think partnerships, obviously you've mentioned it already, but they're really important. So how do you think a charity like yourself can engage with corporate partners to support their business journey towards becoming environmentally friendly? And can you share any of the examples?
Yeah, thank you. Thank you, Nella. Yeah, and it's really interesting. I would say as well, it's not just corporate partners. We mentioned about smaller businesses as well. We work just as much with smaller businesses as large corporates. And why do companies engage with us? And I think it goes back to your point about it's long term. You've got to have a long-term vision, haven't you, for your business, where you think it's heading. And actually, as you all describe, when I go around and speak to businesses, large and small, one of their key issues is skills. And that emerging talent that is coming through our education system are expecting a different workplace than the one that maybe we've traditionally sat in the past. And they do talk about things such as people and planet before profit. They do want to work for an organisation that cares about the environment. So from an attractiveness perspective, in terms of you recruiting for the future, I don't think there's anything more important than talking about the way that you care for the environment, what you are doing as a business for the environment, and actually what your industry and sector is doing for the environment. Because if you could take one example of, say, for instance, the aerospace business. I was speaking at a conference recently where fundamentally I challenged them all, from all the large corporates we work, for instance, with Airbus, all the way down to some small businesses who might just manufacture small component parts. I know through working with the sector how much work they're doing in terms of change of fuel, of materials for the airlines.
And it's a really exciting industry to work for. But yet you speak to young people, they will say to you, you stick planes up in the sky and it's bad for the environment. And that's their thought process. And unless the sector gets better working collaboratively together, explaining that message, explaining what an exciting industry and the potential for you to come in as an engineer, as a technologist, whatever it may be, and be part of that process to make that difference. That's what young people are interested in. I'd use the example of Viridor as one example in terms of you asking Nella for an example of a company we work with. We've worked with them for 15 years and we've seen a fundamental shift change, and we work with them on building a circular economy project that young people can use, and they build a ton of skills all the way from working in a team, presentation, building a project report, all the kind of things that you need young people to build to get into work and be work ready. But the focus and interest for young people is around the environment. We have a whole host of themes around different topics, but environmentally sustainability is the most popular project, regardless of what age group we're talking about. So I'd encourage all of you to consider the work, looking at it from a long-term commitment. What long-term commitment could you make for particularly some of these young people that really need that help? They need the role models. They need to work with companies like you, and for you to excite them that there is an exciting hope and future, and there's businesses to come and work for in that future who actually are developing different tools, technology, whatever it may be, which is going to make this planet a better place. That's where they want to come and work.
Amazing. Thank you so much for that. Can we just have the mic closer when we're talking? That'd be great. So Freddie, so challenging the norm should be everything that everything that we do in terms of progress. And I think the evolution of technology is changing all industries really quickly. And I think the sustainability is evolving, and it's about learning from all sectors. And we're sat here today and we've all got a different perspective. So I just want to know, what are the challenges are you facing in businesses that are quite common when they're transitioning to a more sustainable journey? And how can PropTech actually support these challenges?
Yeah, I mean, when I read that question, I was like, I've only got 2 minutes to answer, so I'm not quite sure I'll be able to absolutely nail it. But I suppose the lens in which we look down is commercial real estate or built environment space, and not dissimilar to what Alex looks at. And I think really the way that we approach the problem is that often we see that people try to find either the silver bullet, so one solution that will solve all the sustainability problems they've got within the business, or they try to, as I like to say, boil the ocean, which is, can we just try and get everything done at the same time? So we really think that perfect is often the enemy of good. So, and really just focusing on what small changes can you make, as opposed to worrying about a huge strategy to revolutionise the entire processes of your operation, of your offices, of your workforce. What small incremental change can you make now or in a short-term perspective to actually improve what you're doing right now? And for us, that often starts with the simple thing of you can't improve what you don't measure. And the thing that we find often, so we audit existing built stock. The biggest challenge facing commercial real estate is the net zero pathway. And the reality is we have to be 50% of the way there by 2030. And there's an awful lot of built buildings now that are quite a long way away from that. I'm sure Alex has probably seen that in his building surveying team. And 48% of the buildings we've audited, which is sort of almost 3 million square feet, still do manual meter readings. And I'd imagine probably quite a few people here at home have a smart meter or have visibility now of how much energy they're consuming at home. And they can turn the kettle on, turn things off. You have that visibility, that transparency. And what we still find staggering is that these large, complex real estate campuses or buildings don't have that level of transparency. People are none the wiser. There are still buildings that will take total energy consumption of that building and divide it by square footage and tell a company that's how much energy you're using. And I think for us, the simple thing of actually understanding what you're doing, measuring it, allows you to then find a way to make a meaningful impact. And I think around all of these things is transparency. I think a lot of the conversations that we've been talking already is how can I display that? How can I show what we're doing? And if you're measuring it, you can then be transparent about what you've done, what you've achieved, and show people that growth or the trajectory of what you're going to. Because I think, often there's lots of talking about we're going to do these things, we're going to action them. But really, we think transparency and having the data and evidence to showcase what you're doing and that it's working, I think is a really important part to communicating both internally as a business, but also externally to the stakeholders that might want to know exactly what you're doing.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think you're absolutely right, because I have an app that can track how many steps I've done. I can look at my cameras at home where my kids are sleeping. We can turn the heating up, turn the lights on, etc. And I think when you're transitioning from a residential, it seems like the commercial sector is really slow to kind of catch up. And I don't know if everyone has experienced NextGen's display out there, but that's actually an incredible solution in terms of optimizing heat. Because if we're thinking about businesses that are operating on a hybrid basis, actually to heat a whole building, there's so much carbon that is being pumped out there.
Yeah, I think my biggest pet peeve, I haven't seen the NextGen product yet, but I'm looking forward to the demo later. I think the one thing I'd say fundamentally to think about commercial real estate is the way in which buildings are commissioned is at 7 o'clock in the morning or earlier, and they turn off at 6 o'clock or 7 o'clock in the evening. And they're on 100% of the time, all day, every day, 5 days a week, sometimes 7 if they've been really badly commissioned. So if you think about a way in which your business occupies space, you probably don't have 100% of people in 5 days a week. And that was even pre-pandemic. Post-pandemic, I mean, I'm almost guaranteed that's not the case. And there's lots of things now about encouraging the 5-day a week and mandating people to come back to the office space, which is probably a different panel discussion. But the question that we often say to people is, if you know you've got low occupancy on Friday, are you telling the building team to turn off your floor? Are you turning things off? Are you turning lights off? Like, you don't need to worry about a very sophisticated, I mean, it's a fantastic product, I'm sure, but there's really basic things that can be done. It's like, we know that there's not that many people here, so are we actually going and talking to the people in the facilities team to turn things off? And it's pretty simple. So,
yeah. Thank you very much. Obviously, Dale, it's been very much highlighted that everyone is much more focused and aware of the environmental impact on their purchases, the people that they are having supplies and services from. Let me just get a hand in the room, like, who actually has a tracker on their phone or at home? Can you do all of that? Okay. So it's all about health and well-being. We all care where things come from. So clients, customers are more likely to choose a brand that have strong environmental credentials. So with HSBC, you've got a sustainability tracker toolkit that assists businesses in measuring and managing their environment over time. Can you just share what that actually means? How can people use it?
Yeah, sure. I mean, for us, if I give you a bit of context to my role, so I am one of roughly 12, 13 face-to-face relationship managers on the South Coast. We used to be Hampshire, Dorset and the Isle of Wight, but now we have extended. So each of us have a portfolio of around about 100 entities in our list of customers that we go out and see every single day. We are assigned to seeing at least 4 of our businesses every single week and doing regular reviews and keeping up to date. One of the things that we've got is a focus on sustainability and the risks and moving towards one of those economies for our customers, because at the end of the day, there is a risk there. The world is changing, and the way that customers and suppliers and these types of things to move will change. It's an absolute fact. So there's a range of tools that we've got available to various levels of our customers. We tend to deal with, in my sector, businesses up to about 20 million turnover. And our initial job is to make sure that they're fully aware of what's available to them. So it's an education piece. The sustainability tracker is just one of those tools. Okay, it's a very straightforward entry-level system where you will go in, you'll register, you'll put in various details with regards to how your business works in relation to things like waste management, your electricity suppliers, how you use all those side of things. And it will give you a very simple comparison to how your competitors in that sector are also doing as well. Most importantly, what it does, it gives us as relationship managers context to what to look for and how to support them going forward. So when we have our regular meetings, we can bring this up and we can then also assess what future plans are. Now, I've got businesses in my portfolio personally that are B Corp registered, been B Corp registered for a couple of years, and they're way down the line, you know, way ahead of the game. I've also got customers in there that will actively say, I've got no plans. I've got no plans in place. And that's fine. This is where the tracker really comes into its own. It's very simple to use, and it just gives a talking point. Okay, and then from that, we can build our conversations, because it's up to us. The biggest impact we can have at this level is to make sure that everyone understands the risks associated with moving towards that economy in the future. And that's what we do. And then on the back of that, it just means that we can look at opportunities. For example, I had one customer recently that's got no plans, and they said, well, you know, everything's ticking along absolutely fine, and it's no problem. And I said, okay, are you getting any inquiries as to about your supply chains? Oh yeah, we've had one or two of those. You know, so it's those types of risks where potentially they're going to be losing business, or they're at risk of losing business going forward because of the supplies or the customers have different demands and different levels. So quite fortunate. You may not be aware of this, you know, because I've had some interesting conversations this morning already. But it is quite good because there is a general high agenda, you know, for making sure that we're doing the right things with regards to sustainability. We've got, because at the end of the day, we're a business and we've got our own sustainability plans. And if we don't look at the risks around us transitioning as a bank, then you know, we need to be assessing ourselves as well. So anyone could go on and have a look and see what those plans are. It's very clear. But yeah, the tracker is just one very, very simple tool. Yeah. And it's just a conversation starter more than anything. Free as well, isn't it? Totally free, and it's not just for HSBC customers. Anyone can go in and look at it and sign up and register. And I'd say for the ones that are experienced in sustainability or anything like this, you might find it a little bit basic, but it is really, really useful again as a starting point. You know, and it just means that we can take those conversations further and deeper in the future.
Yeah, absolutely. And I actually have completed
it was straightforward, wasn't it?
It was straightforward, yeah, no issues. And it probably took me about 5-10 minutes. Yeah. So yeah, do have a look at it because it's some interesting results.
There's a lot of resources on there as well. And again, it's not about saying this is what you need to do. It will link in and just give very basic ideas of what areas you could be looking at. And then what potentially, you know, you can start to build a plan for future as what you might want to look at. But there's no set agenda to it. It is literally just go in, assess where you're at, and then we can talk about it at a later point.
Thank you. Because we're actually experiencing quite a lot of landlords that are saying that they have got a high ESG agenda, and obviously we're moving away from using fossil fuels. So gas heaters, for example, on industrial units, they are basically being stipulated that we can't put those in. But actually what is happening for any new installation, if they're putting electric heaters and then EV charging points, is actually wiping out the power supply. And there's a massive issue because there isn't enough in the grid. So we need to look at alternative green resources. And I think with any landlords in the room, they've really got to start thinking about how do they budget for that. And I guess, like Alex, for you, can you actually provide any examples of like cost-effective green solutions that businesses can actually start to implement to enhance the energy efficiency? Because EPC, like it's coming up time and time again, being negotiated within green leases clauses. So what's the solution?
Yeah, and I think that, again, going back to mentality, but I think the mentality around the EPC has to change from all parties. I think since it's been introduced, obviously it's near on 20 years now, I believe, the EPC platform, but it's come under a lot of scrutiny recently. Obviously, Rishi last year did his U-turn on implementing these regulations, and it's currently under review again at the moment. But the RICS is sort of trying to muscle in a little bit as well and sort of put some more standard regulations around what they're calling retrofit as well as EPC. So the PAS 2038, where I get too technical, is kind of like the overarching legislation there, which encapsulates EPC as well. But where the view that the RICS are taking on more commercial buildings is taking a fabric first approach. So rather than taking your quick wins, i.e. like putting LED lighting in, like Nella said, transferring your heating systems over to electrifying them, increasing the specification and ventilation of your HVAC system. They're all kind of like your building services elements. And again, smart building tools, energy monitoring tools like Freddie touched upon are also playing a big part in that. So thermostatic controls, so you can sort of control individual areas rather than a whole space. So that's kind of like your quick wins from a building services aspect. But the fabric first approach is really interesting because essentially 80% of commercial buildings in the UK are built pre-2000. So they're really built not with energy efficiency in mind. So that's where the long-term play comes in, rather than sort of having the mentality of, okay, well, EPCs are, commercial buildings aren't going to meet the EPC regulations that are coming in 2027. Rather than like looking to demolish it and rebuild something more energy efficient, how can we upgrade the fabric of those buildings to make them more energy efficient? So that's going to be insulation, window specifications, adding renewables in, and really looking at building it and taking a fabric first approach. I mean, we've recently done some sort of portfolio reviews for some quite large landlords on the South Coast who have got a mixed portfolio of industrial, commercial, retail, and they're concerned. I mean, they're concerned that they've got industrial buildings that they're not going to be able to upgrade to meet those regulations, and it is that cost sort of analysis of where do you go with it, and do you knock it down and rebuild it, or do you push money into upgrading the actual fabric? So yeah, it's a really interesting conversation. And
that's the thing, that they're pushing the cost onto the occupier, right?
Yes, but in new leases that should be mostly protected. The operational element of the operational side of the building needs to be explored as well, and I think that again it comes back down to how to utilise that space efficiently.
Yeah.
And there's a much more, again, has to be a much more collaborative approach between tenant, occupier and landlord to make sure that can actually happen in reality.
Yeah, because I've got a building in Bournemouth, it's 100,000 square feet. The service charge is £18 per square foot. So typically it should be £4 to £6, but because the M&E needs to be upgraded, all of these things, but we're kind of at a stalemate because we don't want to invest in the money if there's no letting. So it's understanding where can we save costs, what can we implement to kind of get those costs down, because ultimately no tenant is going to want to pay an £18 per square foot plus the rent on top of that. And I think when you're implementing energy efficient technologies, one stat that popped out was that it can reduce energy consumption and save 18% of energy use. So it's all about understanding those metrics. And I think what Freddie is alluding to is actually, if you can measure it, then you can put the right plan in place. So, so back to you, Freddie, actually. So can you provide examples of successful cases where businesses have seen financial benefits from implementing sustainability practices?
Yeah, thankfully quite a few, which is good news for sustainability and our planet. A couple of things I just want to touch on quickly just before I do answer your question. So your comment about the national grid and capacity and the challenges around that and the forthcoming is something that I've been quite surprised that hasn't been spoken about enough. I think it's probably quite well known in industrial, but probably less so in offices because the opportunity is not as big as demand side response on the national grid. I don't know, has anyone heard of that in the room? There you go. Brilliant, one person. We can have a chat afterwards. But the National Grid kind of know they've got this problem coming up, and they've actually created an incentive scheme to understand the demands on the grid when they reach capacity. And they've created a really interesting thing alongside Ofcom to allow to encourage buildings to respond to capacity, to actually turn things down or turn things off. And they'll actually pay businesses or pay buildings essentially to react to these events that happen throughout the year. So it's quite an interesting thing when it comes to an ROI. Actually, if we reduce the energy demand at this time, we'll actually get paid money to do so. So not only will our bills come down, but also we'll get a nice check from the National Grid to do things, which is positive and helpful. When it comes to the question around successful, I mean, the £18 a square foot service charge is something that, we find is a big problem when it comes to technology. And I think touching on what Alex said, I sort of joke around the prop tech or technology deployment is this sort of Spider-Man meme of the technology company, the landlord, the tenant, and the property manager all pointing, going, it's your job to solve this problem. And nobody kind of knows, well, is it my job? Is it your job? Who's doing it? And I think one of the reasons why I was really keen to be here is that, you know, landlords and operators talk about businesses as the customer. They are the customer. You're the one that's paying the rent and the service charge, that's paying for these people to work in the building. So you actually have far more clout to go and talk to and force the agenda of these buildings, because the challenge is they've got a huge amount of operational compliance. EPCs, got my own comments about. It's sort of, you can keep going to an EPC assessor until you get the number you want. So that's why I'm always a bit challenged about it. But really, by business driving what they want and expect from the building. So my terrible analogy of on and off of a building, we want to be on demand. Go and talk to them and drive that agenda and get it done. To answer your exact question, the average energy saving in most software platforms will guarantee between 10 to 50% energy savings. And kind of the two probably main case studies for businesses you'll know is the Transport for London put a piece of technology into their building, and they saved on their energy consumption alone £200,000 a year. So that was a 3.5 month ROI for what they're doing. Another building where they managed to save over £100,000 in energy consumption. But these, I'm talking about 200,000 square foot plus big campus assets, not the small ones, but you can still get them on the smaller scale. The thing that's really exciting for me and the industry of technology is there's a case study coming out shortly where actually there's been a value attributed to having a technology in an asset. So one of the big debates is, here's another piece of technology for the building to optimize it. Great thing about energy is there'll be an ROI. So we're going to save money for the occupiers, but there's going to be a pain point, which means the software cost sits on the service charge. And should it sit on the service charge, or should the landlord be paying for it? Or should the occupier be paying for it? And this is still the dynamic of it, which is why the other challenge is there's 100 plus software solutions that you can go and buy that will deliver this for your building. So which one's the right one to do? So there's all these little melting pot bits, but I think from energy management, I can clearly say there's multiple products out there that will save and optimize a building purely on the basis that, unfortunately, the commissioning of these buildings is done to a state of finish it, hand it over, and then when the occupiers move in, no one always comes back and checks and optimizes what's going on.
Yeah, and I think when you think about who should be paying for it, if we take the example I gave of that £18, if you are able to put in the appropriate technology, reduce it to £6, then it should go through the service charge. That's my opinion.
But who's finding the technology to reduce it? That's my challenge. Yeah. Is it the owner? Is it the property manager? You know, 40% of surveyors would say, the RSCS ran a survey around PropTech, and 90% of people think it will impact their business, but less than 40% believe they've got the skill sets to actually interrogate and understand what it is. Yeah. And I know I was a chartered surveyor for 10 years before I changed into working in technology. So there's this gap in skills and diversity of knowledge, and I think only 4 universities in the UK even have a PropTech module on them. So the educational grassroots of people thinking about this thing is still working its way through the industry.
Really interesting. Obviously, that's really insightful. Actually, I'm kind of going off piece. So obviously, in terms of like stats, 73% of consumers take into account sustainability before making a purchase. 38% are willing to pay more for sustainable products. So I guess when we talk about property, I think there are some corporates in here that will pay if they're meeting those right criteria. So Julie, in terms of EDT, integrating the principles of sustainability, and we're talking about education, and you're obviously supporting some disadvantaged children, what is the impact, do you believe, this will have on their understanding of the environmental issues and the future career paths?
Yeah, thank you, Nella. And I'd say the first thing is to me, this was a really interesting transition we did before the pandemic, that I very rarely talk about us as a STEM educational charity, and I don't use that word STEM very often. And the reason being that themes work so much better for young people. Things like environmental sustainability, AI, cyber, things that interest young people. And the environment one is a really interesting one because, of course, for young people, they actually think it's a hobby, it's a passion. What they don't understand is there's a potential career there as well. So what we try and do is fill that gap between saying, oh, you find this interesting, there's a career for you. going back to your point about PropTech, you know, there's so many exciting changes and challenges that we're talking about here today. The problem is the education system is not, and the teachers are not informed. It's not teachers' fault, it's just they don't know enough about some of the changes that's going on. Therefore, how can they relay that? For particularly young people in some real challenging environments, they are probably just thinking about not seeing any, you know, their mum and dad not being peers to them in terms of professional jobs. They haven't got role models to speak to. So for us, it's really, really important that we can get connection between young people, regardless, doesn't matter where they live, what their background is, connecting to companies so that they do start to understand. And for you to be able to relay that a diverse talent pool is what you need. And it is what you all need for the future to enable you to have that real diverse range of views and ideas. When we talk about, and it's interesting listening here today about the energy sector, we've got corporate partners such as Scottish Power. I'm off up to Scotland next week again, talking about to SSEN transmission with National Grid, and so National Gas. And so we talk to these sort of, I would say, the top end, not down to leasing of a building or whatever. But of course, this is the really interesting debate about which energy is going to win for which environment. So, you know, can hydrogen play a role in commercial business versus electricity? Who's going to win certain arguments? And it's interesting to listen to some of those conversations. And in terms of going back to what is good business, the reason why they engage with us is because they have, and you referred to it, Nella, at the start in terms of social value, community benefit clauses in contracts. We can fulfil that need. We can tick that box for them that says, you will engage with young people, but broader than that, actually with your local community to understand and explain what you do. This really matters to some of these big energy companies because they might be sticking and building pylons or doing God knows what on the environment in the local patch. Do you want another nuclear centre next to where you live? So some of these things and the planning permission implications, if they don't go ahead, will have a massive change in terms of the energy sector. Going back to young people and their minds and their challenges that they have themselves, what we do is we try and get them talking about some of the challenges you're talking about here today. You're right, it's not in the curriculum. What we do is we build projects, for instance, with companies all the way up to when students are at college years, and we give them real live business issues from companies, and they go off and they create ideas. What you get back as a business is listening to young minds who are not fashioned by the corporate world over several years, who have a freedom of thought, who care passionately about things such as the environment and some of the what they perceive as really bad things that they don't see messages saying that we're doing enough about to change. And you get new creative ideas. And we've got lots of evidence of companies that have actually picked out some students, they have to sign IP forms before they start because actually the businesses want to take those ideas and bring them forward. And these are 16, 17-year-olds. So never underestimate the power that working with charities such as ourselves can have in terms of helping you become a good business, helping in terms of that social value, but also getting some benefit back in terms of the ideas of young people. They are our future. You know, we're in an ageing workforce, aren't we, who in many sectors, the ageing workforce is going to retire over the next 10 years, and we're going to be dependent on these young people coming into the industry and being able to develop and grow our economy. And I think this is one of the things I'd ask you all to consider.
Yeah, I absolutely agree. We actually employ a guy, Archie, who's 17, and he found us at Venture Fest. He has his own gardening business, and he was like, oh, I'm just kind of exploring what opportunities are out there. I'm really interested in property. we gave him 1 week's work experience, and actually he was fantastic. He came with so many new ideas, things that we haven't thought about. And it's like, I would like to consider myself as young, but ultimately I'm 20 years older than him. And actually he's shaping the way our business is going. And I think it's really important that people do take the next generation seriously.
Yeah, I totally agree with that. And I think there's, like you say, it doesn't need to be massive in numbers, but you would see the difference that it takes. You know, taking young people on apprenticeships, we're on a huge drive at the moment, trying to talk to more young people about apprenticeships as an alternative to university, particularly when you talk about young people from disadvantaged backgrounds. The idea of university fees over several years, they would much rather, when they understand about apprenticeships, many of them, we run courses that just open their eyes to both. We're not having a preference to either, but we're saying to them, here's the choices and what makes sense for you in terms of the way you learn, in terms of some of the costs that are incurred, and they make the right choices for them. The biggest challenge we have, though, is how many businesses will take up young people as a year's placement, as an apprenticeship. It's dropped considerably over the pandemic years, and it's not, to me, showing signs of picking up. So I would just say, you know, don't ever sort of think, well, someone else can train them up and we'll take them all on in their early 20s. We all need to make a commitment to help those young people, because they have not had, the biggest thing I hear all the time at the moment is young people are coming out of university or they're coming to us as apprentices and they're not work ready. And this is a problem we've seen because of, or as part of the issues of the pandemic. These students have not had part-time jobs, they've not had those work experiences, so they're less work ready. And this is what we're trying to do, is enable and build work ready opportunities for them. Doesn't matter what it is, like you say, it could be a week's work experience. It will make a massive difference for that person to come in, start their first job. And that's the difficulty for young people at the moment, is to just get that first job and that foot in the door.
Thank you very much. So I guess we were talking about loyalty and brands, and obviously Patagonia is one of the B Corps that most of us know about. So Jamie, like, what is the opportunity then for purposeful businesses? What's the financial impact?
Thanks, Nella. Yeah, absolutely, Patagonia. They're a great example. They're one of the founding B Corps that exist. Some other B Corps you might have heard of, obviously apart from Omega RE, is Ben & Jerry's, Innocent Smoothies. These are companies that are in and out of our house. So yeah, you'll hopefully start seeing that B Corp logo around a bit more. But to answer your question there, Nella, around kind of purposeful business and what does that look like, there was a fantastic report that came out in November last year from Demos in collaboration with B-Lab UK. And what they looked into was, what is the economic impact of purposeful business? And the results were outstanding. So if every business in the UK acted like a purposeful business, so I would say a B Corp, obviously, but just a purposeful business, there'll be a 7% increase to GDP. 7%. And the things that expand further than that, that really stand out, are the investment in R&D and the shift that would make, but also to the lowest paid worker. There would be a tangible change of £44 a week to every lowest paid worker in the UK. That's a significant shift. So purposeful business has the opportunity not only for the business itself, but the wider economic structure. And the thing that we really see, especially within the UK, we've got 1,800 B Corps in the UK, I mentioned that earlier. There are 9,000 globally. That's $86 billion annually that sits within B Corps. I'll just let that sit for a minute. $86 billion that sits within B Corps. Now, you know, Freddie mentioned earlier around kind of small changes and what that looks like, and that's really what the B Corp framework is there for. One thing I guess I didn't mention earlier is it's a free tool. It's a free tool, there is no commitment. You can open an assessment and use it as a framework for change. And that's really the structure of why B Corp was set up in the first place, is the founders wanted an opportunity for businesses to learn and to grow from other purposeful enterprises. As a B Corp, you have to recertify every 3 years. So obviously you've gone through the last 12 months, but the next phase will be a bit quicker. So as a B Corp, you have to recertify every 3 years. And why is that? Because the landscape shifts. I mean, you've got a great panel here that have all been sharing their experiences and what the future can be looking like. You know, Julie touched on the long-term influence and what that's going to be. And that's why it's so important for this recertification piece, because it learns from the latest scientific research, it learns from legislation shifts, and most importantly, it learns from these, nearly 9,000 companies globally that are feeding into it as a tool for change. Now, Nella, you touched on earlier around kind of economic impact and B Corps and greenwashing and all these different bits and pieces. Now, a couple of things we know categorically. B Corps love working with other B Corps, and fundamentally it's for the transparency piece. Now, a couple of people have touched on that up here. Transparency is so key. We do hear a lot of different language being used about how we're communicating our environmental goals, how we're communicating social goals. I mean, the World Economic Forum, they actually touch on purposeful business. For the World Economic Forum, they speak a lot to their interconnected nature of social, environmental and business enterprises and the importance that that has on the wider community. Now, Julie, you were talking to youth and coming into the workforce. There was a fantastic piece of research from Kite, and their survey was for under 26-year-olds in employment. And 78% resounding response was they expected their role to be a climate role. So not that they expected to be working in the environmental sector, but they absolutely expected that the business they were working for, the influence they had within their position, had the ability to have a climate impact. That's fantastic. And that shows you the scale of employees coming into the workforce and what that looks like. And we do see, especially now for younger employees coming into B Corp space, and they get asked the question, why did you choose this company? What does that look like? There's been a couple of surveys that have happened in the last year, 2 years, and they're using the B Corp directory. So younger people coming into employment are going to the B Corp directory and looking for companies to work for from that directory. And the thing that I would always say around B Corp is absolutely I'm going to advocate for it. It's something that we have seen has tangible results. We see competitors actively working together to shape change within their industry. There are working groups globally around how can these different companies combine to change expectations of what business can achieve. And that's really kind of the economic impact of a purposeful business. And one thing I guess really just kind of to leave with on that as well is that why do companies certify? Companies certify to talk to this greenwashing piece, to really step forward and say, we are legally committing our business to be a force for good. And when I say that, I do actually mean a legal commitment. So to become a B Corp, you have to make a change to your articles of association to implement this commitment. But even if you don't want to become B Corp certified, that's absolutely fine, because what Dale was speaking earlier. It's a free tool and it's a framework for positive change. And there's absolutely no expectation to become a B Corp. So to put that into context, so I've said a few times now, there are nearly kind of 9,000 globally. There are 220,000 B Corp assessments open. 220,000. Now that's not because there are 220,000 businesses looking to become B Corp. Absolutely not. But it's to this purpose piece, this transparency piece. It's around how companies are using it as a simple way of working with their supply chain, with working, seeking out potential opportunities and saying, well, just answer this assessment for us, and then we can really see what it is that you're doing. We can see also where we are as a business and scale of purpose and change and opportunity for growth. And that's something quite powerful.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you for that, because it was actually Johnny's idea to become a B Corp.
Thank you, Johnny.
Yeah. and then he left me to do the assessment. No, but it's a shared job. But and I remember when he first joined us, because he came from JLL Capital Markets up in London, and he said, I really think that we need to be a B Corp. And I was like, look, you only just got here. We're not changing things. And actually, he kind of persuaded me that was the right thing. And we've been on such an incredible journey to go through that. And actually, to be one of 3 commercial agencies in the UK is a real testament. And like you say, that we're really being transparent there. I think when we first put up the mural in Southampton, the agency world was like, oh, she's changing the world one flower at a time. And I'm thinking, yeah, I am. That's what we're doing. Someone has to make a stand. So with this, Dale, obviously implementing these green initiatives can be a really large capital investment for the businesses here. So, and this is how some people don't actually then start to commit because they can't see what the return is. So what is the criteria from HSBC when they're evaluating and approving businesses for green loans? And are there like specific sustainability goals that businesses should be aiming for?
Oh, right, okay. It depends, is the answer. As I was saying earlier, so at my level, we deal with businesses up to sort of 20 million turnover, but then we do have the next sectors that deal with, you know, up to 300 million and large corporates as well. So there's different criterias because there's obviously a different proposition based on what's available. So you could have potentially someone that in my portfolio that will just want to do to change to EVs or solar panels, which, you know, these are the first topics that normally tend to come up. In which case the process is actually very straightforward. It's, you know, you may be looking at a standard loan through us, but if there's any type of sustainability or green link to it, and you can prove that 90% of that funding will go to that particular green initiative, then there may be an incentive to do that. When you start getting into the larger corporate ones, then you may be looking at a more project management based one. So when you're looking at the large corporates and stuff like this, there's a lot more depth to it and a lot more criteria. So you may find that you get assessed every single, you know, 6 months, 12 months or whatever it is to prove that your benchmarks are being achieved. So there's already quite a few different funding options within the bank, and they are developing all the time. My ones tend to be, you know, we're talking about waste, recycling, heat pumps, EVs, the standard stuff as well, but also anything to do with a circular economy as well. So if you can bring that into practice and you want to change that, then there's an option for that. So there's quite a large criteria. Again, you can access this literally just like HSBC sustainability business, and it, you know, it will come up with everything that's on there. It's all open. So for us, I guess really, me personally, I just see this as a natural transition anyway, because years ago, you know, we've seen technology take over manual processes and stuff like this, and it wasn't really questioned because it was just, we need to invest in that to keep pace, and this is what other people are doing, this is what's going to keep us ahead. And this really, sustainability and green lending, it's the same sort of thing, I think. You know, so it's, you're going to adapt to this anyway if you want to, otherwise you're at risk of falling behind. Just to give you an idea, and I'm probably going to cross over from what I was talking about earlier, but with regards to some of the benefits of us being face-to-face relationship managers and having these discussions, is that we can find out whether it's personal to the business owner or whether it's a business decision. And at the moment, so out of, like I say, about 100 entities in my portfolio, I think I've got 2 fully certified B Corp. The conversations I've had over the past couple of years has been about staffing issues and how hard it's been to get quality staffing. And to be honest with you, the 2 B Corps didn't have that issue. They had people waiting to join them. So pretty much what Jamie was saying, you know, this is starting to happen already. So with regards to the lending and that, there is no real strict criteria at our level. If it makes sense and it's affordable, because it's not just a case of changing everything overnight, because, you know, that could just damage your affordability anyway. It needs to be a sensible approach to it. We will fund. You know, there, at my level, for things like EVs, there is a specific fund set aside. So you will go through the normal lending process, but there is a green fund that we can access. If you're doing more project-based, longer-term stuff, then it may be that you are benchmarked at certain points. We've recently implemented a new loan, which is, let me get this right, because these do change, a sustainability improvement loan, where if you're registered with EcoVadis and you have a rating with them, then depending on your performance within that and your rating, there may be a benefit on the rates that you get. If that slips and if the score drops for some particular reason, then that rating may change. On the same token, if it improves, then you may get an enhanced rating. So this is all developing. You know, these are all new things that are coming in all the time, but it is very, very high on the agenda. It's a strong thing. And again, us as relationship managers, this is what we tend to do. We link up. So for my customers, you know, already I've got some names where I think perhaps you could come and attend a meeting with all, you know, all of my customers that want to join, or get onto a Zoom call or something like this with the region and educate our customers, and also potentially pick up new businesses. So we're not just here to say, this is what we offer you. We're here to support and talk through and help. And if that means we can sit down in front of experts, then happy days. You know, that's what we do. So it's not just the funding side, but that was a bit long-winded, wasn't it? But no, it is a varied range of options.
But the question at the top of my mind, show me the money. Like, what is the percentage? What's the interest rate? Is it a lower rate for green loans? Shouldn't there be tax breaks or incentives for people to be more sustainable?
This decisions made way above my level. For me, there are incentives going on. I find it a bit challenging. I don't know whether we should be incentivising. I get it as an initial look, you know, get on the ball sort of thing, get things started and look at lending. But from my point of view, and this may be completely wrong, you know, may disagree with me, but I think as soon as you start incentivising something, then you get people who will do it for the wrong reasons.
Yeah.
And as soon as you do that, that seems to be a bit of a slippery path. For the ones that I've got in my portfolio that are already big into the green initiatives and B Corps and stuff like this, you know, I can highly recommend, when I send up a credit application or something like that, they will get my complete backing. And if I can squeeze a rate because of how I feel that they're doing things and they're affordable and they're doing it in the right way, and just being an ethically minded business, then I'm more likely to price that at the lower end, as much scope as I've got, because I think longer term there's less risk.
Because I think innovators, where we're disrupting the norm, and actually is constantly being challenged, and actually having that financial support or aid is going to help people become more sustainable, don't you think?
Absolutely, yeah. And I think this is possibly why the fact that we keep in our face-to-face propositions for our relationship managers is key.
Yeah.
Because we need to have those conversations. You know, you can't really do this if you're speaking to someone over the telephone or something like that. And you know, we're very personal in the way that we do things. So we'll sit down, we'll have open conversations, and let's sort of like play around with some ideas.
Yeah.
And if there's anything that can be done on those fronts, then yeah, absolutely right.
Thank you.
Of course.
I think you would all agree that sustainability is such a topical topic. I believe it's not all about financial return. If we don't act now, it's likely that you will be left behind. So I'm going to put it to the floor because we're obviously running out a bit of time. So does anyone have any questions? You at the back, yeah?
Me?
Sorry, I can't see. I haven't got my glasses on. Yeah,
sorry,
Ian.
Ian Dubras from Freddie. Does B Corp have a competitor? The B Corp movement?
So there's no kind of direct competitor, and there's absolutely some brilliant other accreditations in the landscape. So you've got Planet Mark, they're really focused purely on environmental. To be honest, there's many different ones. Like with any industry sector, there's lots of different accreditations companies can go after. The thing that B Corp is separate, is set apart, is this holistic overview. So we've talked a couple of times about sustainable business, but I guess the question to pose is, what is a sustainable business? A sustainable business doesn't mean necessarily a green business. A sustainable business is a business that has long-term positive impact, that's resilient to change, and is having a significant influence socially as well as environmentally. If you kind of think of some of the examples that the panel have been giving around that. So B Corp is kind of in its own space currently as a holistic approach. They work with the UN Global Compact as well, so they've created an SDG action tracker. So if anyone's heard of Sustainable Development Goals, so they've been the kind of chosen partner for the UN to really look at shaping the way that businesses can influence. So currently no, but to be honest, that wouldn't be a bad thing if there was a competitor. You know, the absolute ideal would almost, you don't need these accreditations. Wouldn't it be a great place where
business as usual was acting like a B Corp, that purpose was the first intent, and therefore actually acting not in that way was the separate entity.
Absolutely. Any other questions, Johnny?
Question probably for Freddie and Alex, but we talked about return on investment for prop tech or investments into buildings or whatever it may be. And picking up on some of the points raised earlier, have you ever seen, and can you give some examples of where landlords or businesses have installed equipment just because it's the right thing to do? There's no necessary financial benefit for it, but it's just what should be done.
I would say yes, but predominantly in major refurbishments and new buildings. So I think as the focus shift of those things have come into, again, that's probably even nice to say it, so probably it's still driving to, you know, reduce voids, increase rental premiums. That's what's driven and galvanised a big part of it. So I'd say that from a specification of a new asset, it's absolutely the new baseline or the new expectation that, you know, it should be BREEAM or above a rating. But in an existing building, from a retrospective perspective, I think most people still rely on the plans, maintenance schedules of things and replace them as they come up and as they need to, and or as they get vacancy they come through, that they're looking for an ROI, looking for that return of what they're doing. But maybe my lens is slightly different to Alex's.
No, I haven't seen anyone do it out of the goodness of their heart yet, to be honest. There was one scheme we did last year where it was a student housing scheme, 60 units, and we did a big refurb on it on the project, and they installed energy monitoring devices, occupancy kind of devices to understand how occupants are using the space. But then their BMS system in that building wasn't sophisticated enough for that to bolt onto, so they were just gathering data to use for like future projects and how to design the M&E systems for that. So that's almost a little bit there's no financial benefit there immediately, but obviously it's for a long-term investment.
So that answers Dale's question, you need to be incentivised.
I don't believe I said you need to be incentivised. I mean, I've got a couple of customers that, you know, one in particular, this is their core nature. This is what they believe in anyway. They've driven the business on that. So they probably could have done just as well up to this point, or maybe that's arguable. They could cut corners if they wanted to. You know, they could go for cheaper options and stuff like this, but it's just not in their nature. And actually their brand is now built around that, about just being what I would really bring it down to, is just being decent people, you know, and doing things in a right way. And because they're doing that, they're starting to get the rewards from it as well, because not only do more people want to be linked to this business, they want to get involved, they want to invest, they want to help them, you know, they want to join the business and everything like that. So I do think there's a benefit to it. And again, you know, if anyone wants to negotiate with me, that's absolutely fine. Come on. If the proposition's there, we'll talk about it. And like I say, if there's anything that can be done on rates, if you are one of these businesses, then absolutely we're gonna take that into account. Me as a relationship manager, when I send up my report, that's going to become a part of it, and I will push those rates if it makes financial sense.
Any other questions? Yeah.
Just a question for really Alex and Freddie. I'm on the start of my green journey. I've just actually been qualified as a non-domestic energy assessor. You touched on EPCs earlier on. What would you say that, from my perspective, that I could work with clients, advise, etc., and what do you see the change in EPCs?
Congratulations, Glenn, on your new qualification.
Thank you.
I think, again, it comes back to the point of educating clients and landlords that getting an EPC shouldn't be a tick box, it shouldn't be a requirement, it should be that is adding a lot of value in operational costs and also attracting tenants that are sustainably led, and that should have a premium to it. So I think it's almost looking at, rather than just a quick win now, let's do the energy upgrade or measure the efficiency of it to get us through the next 3 years. Let's look at it for the next 10 years, because obviously the criteria is only going to continue to increase. So we see a lot of clients sort of implementing really quick wins, but not really thinking about the long-term future. So I think having that long-term outlook and providing on those major works that are going to be a bit more disruptive, but being able to plan those around cyclical maintenance requirements or change of tendencies, and giving that longer-term strategic advice is really important.
And then one last question.
Yeah, it's just sort of quite quick. First of all, yeah, thanks for assembling such a diverse panel. It's been great hearing sort of all the different views from different backgrounds. I love purposeful company, that expression, and I'll have to talk to you later, I think. But talking about changing buildings and issues that you have to go through, we're in the process actually moving to new premises at the moment. That's undergoing reparations from the previous landlord. It had radiators, gas boiler in. We came in and said, through the process, we want to install air source heat pumps for the heating. We want to have solar augmented water heating with electric. No, it can't do that. Got to put a new boiler in, new radiators, only for us to come in and take them out when we move in, so that the landlord can sign off against reparations for the company that was in there first. They don't want to pay for new stuff. So they're not paying for it. We're paying for it. We'll pay the difference. We still have to go through that process of putting old equipment back in, only for us to go and take it out. And it's that sort of, it's just that thing that's crazy. Yeah. It's crazy. But there doesn't seem to be any way around it.
It sounds like you don't have the right advisors, so maybe we should chat. But in all seriousness, I think there are some really silly decisions being made, because we've got some situations where, again, this gas heater, the landlords are saying, you can't have it in because it's going to affect my EPC. It doesn't. We've done the tests. It just affects it in terms of the rating number. It was still a B, but then they gave us additional rent-free to incentivise, so for us to then put it back in. So at the point of EPC, it was a loophole that they kind of said, right, we're just going to take it out, you can put it back in after the assessment. Yeah. So yeah, maybe we should have a conversation. Anything else to add on that?
Yeah, I think you touched on a good point around the dilapidations of when sort of tenants are leaving buildings and landlords are looking to reinstate. There's so much wastage and dilapidations, and so many times we act for clients where we're ripping out really good quality glass partitioning and fit out, and by floor coverings, just changing all the floor coverings because it's an express lease covenant. But at the end of the day, the ones in there are basically brand new. So I think there's again a big educational piece there for potentially obviously solicitors to look at when drafting leases and landlords to buy into around lease covenants.
But also just add to that, I'd say that there's a growing circular economy or second-hand market for this fixtures and fittings. So actually, you can now end up paying more for a second-hand floor tile than you will for a new one, which is kind of a good thing and a bad thing, which probably is quite unfortunate. But I think in your conversation, I would hope that you could either push the landlord and to say that we won't come to this building, we'll go somewhere else if you won't take the logical step of doing it. And I personally have a big anti-passion for Cat A or base build office space being put in, laid out as everything's open plan. So you go in and it's all fitted, and then the moment you come in and do your fit out, you take out 20% of the ceiling that's been up for 2 weeks, throw in a skip. Yeah. And you know, those, which is now the trend now, is more to just shell and floor, so nothing in the ceiling, just the flooring down, so you can get some visualization. So you design it on purpose, and we're a very strange country that still speculatively builds buildings. You know, lots of other countries around the world will wait until you come in and say, these are my requirements, fantastic, I'll build you what you want. So we kind of have to predict who's coming in and hope we deliver the right thing, which is a bit hard.
Yeah. Okay, well that's
sorry, can I just,
sorry,
just one quick step, and obviously not from a property perspective. But to your point there as well, to kind of to what Alex and Freddie have just been saying, there are 49 B Corps in Hampshire, and any of them within the last couple of years that have gone through a premises change have had basically the same conversation. We do hear this a lot, and it is shaping which premises they then choose to go to and how they're doing what they're doing. And I also just wanted to flag Tracker UK, who are based in Portsmouth, and they'll come in, they'll empty a premises, and then you can buy the second-hand furniture for them. And they work really closely with lots of local charities to make sure that any furniture that's not used is then repurposed, put to good use, and it does not go to waste at all. So, yeah.
Great plug. We're actually down the Lake as well as building. We're going and finding or repurposed furniture for our building rather than going and buying new.
Amazing. Right, I'll have one more question and then we'll close the floor.
Just a quick one. Obviously, Jamie, you said about there's a directory for people who are looking to be green and eco-friendly. We're a green commercial cleaning company. So is there other directory lists that we can look at to potentially help customers with their cleaning and their supplies for being eco-friendly?
Sorry, hearing's not great. I think you were saying other directories that companies can use to flag their credentials. Honestly, I'm sure there absolutely are. I don't know them myself. There are many different directories that exist for kind of local businesses as well. The B Corp directory itself, you have to be a fully certified B Corp to be on there. So it's kind of something, perhaps an opportunity there. But yes, I'm sure there absolutely are kind of local directories. And one thing I would say as well in kind of this local space is that I'm sure like we've all seen, and we see it a lot within B Corps, is that if a B Corp finds a company that they trust and they resonate with, then they will recommend it around to the local space, like with any company, but especially for regards to things that perhaps are more environmentally positive, that absolutely does get circulated, but as a separate directory, I'm not aware of any.
All right, thank you so much. Thank you so much to our panel. Please give them a round of applause. So I really appreciate like the insight that you've all shared and people from the floor, and I really hope that we can continue the sustainability journey together. I'm going to leave you with one question today, and that is, how will you deviate from the norm? So I'll leave that with you. Right, most of you hopefully picked up a red envelope on your way in. If you didn't, so in there, they're all actually handwritten. You scratch it off, there's a fortune, but there's one person in the room, hopefully, that will win the B Corp hamper. And it was just really, it was an exercise that I did with my son. We did a B Corp mission in the supermarket to find how many brands that we could find. So if it is you, then please do collect your hamper. But thank you so much for coming today. And hopefully we'll see you at our next event. Thank you.